Lamed Gimel, and we're holding Ois Hey, line 8. So we were speaking about the idea of Kol HaKodesh Krishma B'lei Tfilin, Kol HaMakrib Oila B'lei Mincha V'Zevach B'lei Nesachim Ki'ilu Kodesh Krishma B'lei Tfilin, and we explained, just like the idea of Oila versus Nesachim, is that Oila is about the idea that it goes upwards, that it rises upwards, versus the idea of the Nesachim is about going down, and I'm Shachalamato and coming down into this world. The same thing we have concerning the Krishma and film. Krishma is the idea of Limser Nafshi Be'echad. It's about going upwards, about rising up, and film is about Amshach Lamata into this world. It's the Mitzu is coming down, the ink on the parchment, etc., etc. So therefore, it's all about the kavanah, the purpose, which is dir b'tachtonim, the ultimate thing, which is just like the Nesach. Now, earlier in the Maimer, the Rebbe brought down a medrash that said after the Yidden mourned their punishment for the Chet HaMeraglim and Vayis Ablu, so then Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, go and be comfort them with words of Torah, and teach them the parsha of the Nesachim. So this is what he was doing. He was teaching them the parsha of Nesachim to comfort them and help them out of their sad state over the entire story with the Marag. So the question that the Rebbe asked, why of all parshas of the Torah is the comfort something that happens because of the parsha of Nesachim and so on? So that's what he's going to explain right now. Ois Hey, line 8, page Lamed Gim. The parshas Nesachim, the parsha of Marag, according to this, was to be understood why the parsha of Nesachim is written close to the story of the Maraglim. Because the parsha of Nesachim is repairing, and it's also a consolation for the story with the Maraglim, for the event of the Maraglim. The idea behind this is the Maraglim were a generation of a highly developed mind, etc. When they were in the desert, they were in such a state and situation that they were only involved in matters of good and matters of holiness. That was what they were involved in. They weren't involved in other things. That's why the Medrash says that the Torah was only given to those people that ate the man. In other words, it was given in Midbar Sinai, 7 weeks after the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. It's already like a few after their matzah that they took out of Mitzrayim ran out. The manna already come down for a few weeks. That is the generation, the people that were on such a spiritual state that they were consuming godly bread, divine bread that came in the Shemayim. That's to whom the Torah was given. What does that mean? What does that signify? That they were eating man, and that's why they were able to receive the Torah. First thing is, they didn't have to be engaged and involved in worldly matters. That's what it means. They didn't eat food from the earth. They didn't have to deal even with, like he's soon going to say, going ahead and buying food from other people and so on. They had everything set and ready. And this is really the spirit behind, especially the modern yeshivas, where the needs of the bacher is completely taken care of. So he doesn't have to worry. His mind can be focused completely on Torah learning. I've even mentioned this in letters. To such a high degree was the man that the man had no waste to it. Like the Yidden even complained about it and so on. What does this mean? Well, we say that they ate the man and it was something that they didn't have to be involved in worldly matters and it had no waste. So it means they were in such a state and situation where the entire idea of waste and psoilus was not even applicable to them. It was completely not in their world. So there's an interesting thing that it says that man itself had no waste, but the Yidden had an opportunity and a choice that There were also the peddlers from the nations of the world, from the different nations that surrounded the wilderness, that Yidden could buy food from. So it says, Milvad mashakanu mitagri umas oilam, except for that food that they bought from the peddlers, from the people that were selling them, from the nations around them, and that when they ate it did have waste, and they did have to use the restroom afterwards, but not the month. Absolutely, Zois. If not for the fact that they lowered themselves to go ahead and purchase food from the Umas Ha'olam around them, there was no idea of a waste by them whatsoever, no negative, no worldliness by them whatsoever. And their complaint was that we need to remain in the wilderness without any connection to matters of the world. Just like, how did we receive the Torah? We received the Torah because we were disconnected from the world. We were disengaged from the world. We weren't involved in the world. So they said, this is the ideal state. This is the state that we have to live. This is called a Torah life, removed from the world. The world is from the expression concealment and covering. By saying, heaven forbid, there could be, if they were to leave the Midbar and go into Eretz Yisrael, there could be a state and situation where it'd be a land that consumes its inhabitants. What does that mean? That the land consumes its inhabitants? What's the normal state of being? The normal state of being is that the person is in control of the land. The person improves the land. The person is not limited to and by the land. But they were worried that the land would overtake them. The land and the earthiness would overwhelm them. I knew, they said, instead of the fact that they will settle in the land. And they will transform and make from the coarseness of the land, and how much more so from the material nature of the land of this low world, they will make it a settled land, a land where the Eibishter resides over there. By the way, Gashmis and Gashmis is not as severe and as coarse as Chumrius is. So they'll make from the Chumrius, and how much more so they'll make from the Gashmis and Eretz Neshavas. So instead of that, they were concerned, they were worried, that the earth will consume and eat up its inhabitants. It will literally eat up, it will gobble up the person that is working the land. He will, heaven forbid, become nullified before the material state of the world, and if he, the core state of the world, and if he's not nisbatel to the core state of the world, at least he'll become nisbatel before the physicality of the world. Just like when something is eaten up, what happens when I eat something? That thing that I ate becomes now part of me. It's now bottled to me. I eat some bread, that bread has become bottled to me. They were saying that Eretz Echeles Yeshveh, that we will go into Eretz Yisrael, and instead of us transforming Eretz Yisrael into a place where the Shekhinah can reside, Eretz Nesheves, a settled land, a civilized land, a land of Kedusha, instead, the earthiness, the land aspect, the physicality, the coarseness will consume me, meaning I, instead of ruling over the land and bringing godliness to the land, instead I will become earthly, and the land will take me over. This is the idea. Chassidus explains the inner meaning of the term that the Chazal use, Am Ha'aretz. It doesn't use, when it wants to use someone the opposite of a Talmud Chacham, it doesn't say someone that doesn't know how to learn. That's a mistake to call someone that doesn't know how to learn, according to Chassidus, to call him by the term Am Ha'aretz. Am Ha'aretz means a nation of the land, meaning they are beholden to and subservient to and lost in earthiness. That's the idea of Am Ha'aretz. Versus Talmud Chacham is a student from Chacham Elyonis, is Mekabel the Bittul Mulmaila, etc. So they were worried they'd all turn into Amaratzim, meaning they would all become earthy people. They'd become this battle and consumed and overtaken by the land completely. Top of page Lamed line 3. Amnam, for this the response was to them, but just the opposite. Don't be worried that the land will consume you, but just the opposite. The land is very, very good. Behind this means it's insufficient the idea that it's only one time the level of ma'od. That to this level of one-time ma'od, we reach to the avoid of Kriya Shema in a way that we're doing Kriya Shema. So that already is one ma'od. So that you reach already through Kriya Shema. Remember, we're going back to the connection between Kriya Shema and film. That there needs to be not just Kriya Shema but film, because with Kriya Shema you have only one ma'od. But by going into the land, dealing with Dir B'Tachtonim, which film is about, like we said before, it's coming down below. So then you have Toiva Oretz Ma'od Ma'od. Alaroitzim Sheyiyeh Ma'od Ma'od Shnei Pa'amim. We want that to be very, very good twice. To be able to attain the Ma'od Ma'od, there needs to be specifically the lowering into the earth specifically. Toiva Oretz Ma'od Ma'od. This means in addition to the descent, that we go from a high building to a deep pit, a deep dungeon, by the very nature that the very fact that our neshama is lodged in a physical body, that's already a descent from a very, very high level to a low place. So we're saying that's insufficient. You want to reach ma'od ma'od, that descent alone, that the neshama is in the body, is insufficient. So it has to be rather line 12 here. You need a lot of midbar to leave the idea of the wilderness. That in the wilderness there are no matters of mundane things. That mundane things have to do, weekday things, worldly things has to do with olam, with world. And we said before, the meaning of the word olam is concealment, covering. So in other words, when we deal with the mundane, when we deal with the physical, when we deal with the land, we're dealing with things that are concealing God. And to go to a land, the land on its own, before the Yidden entered, is called Eretz Canaan. Is called Shiva Umas. The land of Canaan includes in it all the 7 nations, like Nani, Achita, Amoria, Pizra, Busra, Goshki, Shekoilim, Kol Shiva Umas. That we know that the 7 nations include in it all the 70 archetypal nations that are making up the whole world. Why? What's the significance of the number 7 and 70? The Keneged Shivas Hamidas. That's in the way of 7. That it corresponds to the 7 emotional attributes. But which type of 7 emotional attributes? We're talking about Eretz Canaan. We're talking about the 7 nations, which are the root of the 70 nations, 7 times 10. What is that? It's talking about Chas v'Shalom, the 7 midas of Klippa. So Yidden are coming from this extremely holy place in the Midbar, the Oichle Haman, no psoilus, no engagement with the world, completely devoted to Limud HaTorah, and now they have to enter to a place that's completely about the land of Canaan, the land of the 7 midas of Klippa, which give the source for all the details of the midas of Klippa, that it should be 70 nations, which is 7 times 10. And only through that will we reach Ma'od Ma'od. But that's it says, Ba'ofen, the Oloi Nala, Shtepam Virashnois. When they said about returning and going to Eretz Yisrael, despite what the Meraglim said, so they said, Oloi Nala, we will surely go up and we will inherit the land. What does it mean, Oloi Nala? Why does it say again, go up, we will go up? Because this idea of going up, we will go up, shows again that the aliyah is a twofold aliyah, not just the aliyah to the level of ma'od, but the level of ma'od. And then they also say, it said, ki lachmeinu heim. because they are our bread. What did we explain earlier in the Maimer is the idea of bread. Bread is what joins the neshama with the body. Over here, and you need to have the karbanas, and you need to have the nesachim to be able to bring the joining of the Eibishter in the world, because the Eibishter is the soul of the body of the world. So the Kol of Yeshua told them, Lachmeinu he. What does it mean? That this is going to be the ultimate joining, the ultimate bread, the ultimate revelation of Hashem in and connection with the world in the ultimate revelation, like in the Nesachim. Inyan Alechem, the idea of the bread, that causes the joining between soul and body, the Lechem of Avenish Yisad, that the bread will support the heart of Enosh. By the way, I don't know if before some talk about this, but if you notice, there's this type of contrast. They said Eretz Eicheles Yeshveha. They said it's a land that consumes its inhabitants, meaning they're worried that they would be consumed by it. And Kol of Yeshua said just the opposite. Ki lachmeinu heim. The nations of the land, we will consume them. They will be our bread. But anyway, then the Rebbe goes on even further. State of Mizah, line 20, even more so. Start silam aleim. They were told that their shadow, which means their protection, was removed from them. Because protection, shadow in Chassidus is associated with makif. It's something external to the person. So we know that klippus get its chayes from the makifim. It can't get a chayes from the pnimi because it's not bottled. So they get a chayes from the makif. So they were told, sartilam aleim, even the makif that they had, that's also gone. Kivin shavai tanu, because Avai is with us. And then becomes also revealed the idea that the land is very, very good. Until the literal meaning of the psukim. Eretz Toiva Rechava, a good and broad land. Eretz Chito Soid of a Geffen, Saint of a Rimoin, a land of wheat and barley and the vine and the fig and the pomegranate. Eretz Zeishem Dvash, a land of olive oil and the honey of dates. Shivas Aminim Shtapchim Eretz Yisrael. It becomes physically a blessed land. The seven kinds, the seven species that Eretz Yisrael was praised by. They came down via chain descent. The reason why they're blessed in the physical in these seven kinds is because they have a spiritual source above that corresponds. There's a chita in the spiritual worlds, and there's oida in the spiritual worlds, etc. Until we see their source of how there is and above, the fact that they are from the shiurim in the Torah, the different measurements in the Torah, that we derive from this pasuk that all of them were said for shiurim. The Chazal saying Gemara Brachas that every one of these seven kinds has a certain shear that it symbolizes and relates to. Obviously, Kizayas, we all know the shear of Kizayas, but every one of these is actually related and telling us about a certain shear, the Chazal say. So in other words, there's the physical, etc. And then there's the ultimate spiritual idea, the way this stands in Torah, that in Torah there's these things. Any questions before we go on? I'd like to finish the mimer today, so let's try to keep it on point. Okay, top of page Lamed Hey, line 1. So again, we're trying to explain what was the Nechama, what was the consolation. How was Hashem consoling the Yidden that were mourning their lost opportunity that occurred through the Chet HaMeraglim, and he consoled them by telling them about the Parsha of Nisach. So to be able to explain that, he first started explaining what was the problem with the Meraglim and what Kalev said and so on. So now we're going to talk about the consolation of the Parsha of Nisach, and then becomes the idea of the consolation behind this means. Though there was the idea of the spies. That was a negative thing. In other words, through the fact that there was a total regret after the sin of the Meraglim. Like it says, the nation was mourning very much. So in other words, it shows that they regretted what they did wrong with following the advice of the Meraglim. The idea of this regret, that's the avoid of tshuva. Then Hashem said, you need to appease them, you need to comfort them through words of Torah. Chazal say, I've created a Yetzer Hara, and I've created for the Yetzer Hara the Torah, which is a Torah of spice. In other words, there are foods that are not able to be eaten sometimes. The only way how you could handle it and deal with those foods is you have to spice it up especially well and so on. The same thing, you have the Yetzer Hara. The Yid wanted to do tshuva on something I did with the Yetzer Hara, so Hashem is comforting them and giving them Torah to help them overcome the Yetzer Hara, to help them in their tshuva process. But again, we asked, okay, Torah is fine, but we mentioned why specifically Parsha Nesachim in the Torah. Well, the Torah, specifically the Torah, which aspect did Hashem give them as a result and as a comfort and consolation when they were doing tshuva? With Parsha Nesachim, he gave them the Parsha of the Nesachim. Shaskalos at the beginning is when you will come to the land of your settlements. You need to specifically come to the land and make from it an inhabited land. In such a way that it's called the land of your settlement. Again, as we mentioned previously, why does it say, then you will bring the carbon, then you will bring the Nesachim? Part of it comes to tell you the halacha that the full dinim of Nesachim only started, like we mentioned in the previous Maimer, after the 7 years that they divided the land, they conquered the land, another 7 years of conquest, a lot of dividing. Well, it's the spiritual idea that it has to be mosboteichem. The idea is that the whole idea of Nesachim is settling and permeating the land. Kivun shasi yasalarts and shavas. The idea avodas adam atachton, since the making it into an inhabited land, it's through the avoid of the person down here. So it's saying it's eretz mosboteichem. It's your inhabitants. You made this into a settled land. You made this into a place where godliness is settled inside of it. Through the avoid of every single yid, while being a soul in a body, he settles the land. Similar to what it says in the Medrash. The explanation to the simple meaning is to investigate the land. But the Medrash says this is related to a pasuk that says in a different place, it says that the advantage of the land is in all, whatever that pasuk means. But the point is, we're talking about lasuru is from the word advantage and growth and increase and quality. Hainu lifel by Yisrael. The yisuru is really about causing an advantage, an addition, an increase, a growth in the land that it would not have had before the Eden went in. And like we said, Shatia, by the Tevarts Moed, it should be in such a way, like it says, that the land is very, very good. State upon Moed, twice Moed. Like all the different explanations and hints, what exactly does it mean when it says twice Moed? Even though the Rebbe already mentioned it a few times here, he didn't literally explain what dargis it is. Is it one Moed is Soiviv and another Moed is higher than Soiviv, Atzmus, whatever it is, that everything go into the levels. The main thing is that it's above and beyond what would be, even like we said, even in davening, which is one Moed. So it should be able to be the idea that you will arrive to the land. And not only will you arrive to the land, but you will transform the land and make it to a land of your settlements, of where the Yidden are like invested and bringing godliness down in it. And it's your doing of it, it's your place of settlement. So to be able to do that, That's what you need the Parshas Nesachim. Tzarech lahakriv oiloi zevach. You need to bring a carbon oila or carbon shlamim, but that alone is not enough. That is only like the level of ma'od. That's only like the level of Kriya Shema. But v'gam lahakriv mincha nesachim. You also have to bring the meal offering and the nesachim. You have to bring shem and oil. V'gam yayin, also wine shemasamech alakim v'anoshim, that makes rejoice both alakim and anoshim. Like we said before, it brings out that which is concealed. Just like the wine, it was concealed originally in the grape. The same thing, the wine, when the wine enters, then the secret comes out. It brings out and reveals that level of Hashem that is in the world, but not necessarily visible in the world. And that is brought out through the Nesachim. Through that also becomes the double comfort. He's referring to the idea that we say after Tisha B'Av, that there is the Haftarah after the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av is Nachmu Ami, that because Laksa B'Kiflaim, since the Yidden suffered doubly, so therefore their consolation is a double consolation. So the same thing over here, that to have this double consolation is through the avodah of the Nesachim Eretz Meshvesech. In such a manner, in such a way that darkness becomes transformed to light and the bitter is to sweet. So in other words, there's two aspects to the consolation. One aspect of the consolation is we do away with the dark. But another aspect is that the darkness itself becomes light. And the same thing, one way it can do away with the bitterness, but a higher level, a second level of consolation is that the bitterness becomes sweet. This is also the general avodah of every man and woman amongst the Yidden. Especially when we are coming at the heels of Matan Torah. Then becomes a time at the level of being engraved upon the luchais. Like Chazal say, do not read it engraved, but read it at a level of freedom. So at the time of Matan Torah, and the time of the giving, the luchas, we became free. The Yetzer Hara from the Yetzer Hara of Adrabah, just the opposite, instead of having the Yetzer Hara. So not only do we negate the Yetzer Hara, but we transform the Yetzer Hara, like we said before about the Sabcha Shekel and Hara. Avoid is with all your heart. Not only don't you have to suffer from the Yetzer Hara, not only are you free from the Yetzer Hara, but you've transformed the Yetzer Hara that he also serves Hashem. That is the whole avodah these days, is in all types of avodah that's similar to the karbanis. My avodah, the Kriya Shema, top of the last page. That we have these days, all of our avodah is in a way of rising up from below to above. And afterwards, the primary service of making for our home down here below. Through matters of avodah that are similar to mincha and nesachim. And this is done out of joy. Like we said, even like it says, you serve Hashem out of joy. And also the joy, we said before, shows our revelation. When a person is joyous, he reveals. We spoke earlier in the Maimer that the wine of the libation indicates the idea of joy, etc. Until they're all collected, all the Yidden are collected, like it says, you will be collected one by one. Doesn't just mean that every Yid will be collected, but all of our Voida will be collected and gathered together. Since it's Masein or the Seinu in the plural, they have to be all gathered together. Especially the time of the heels of Mashiach. Then the darkness is double and quadrupled. Explained in many places. Also in the conclusion of Saita, that we conclude the study of Saita right before the time of the giving of the Torah. We're going to greet the Mashiach, give the Beis Mikdash, build the Beis Mikdash in this place. We will offer all these things up, the cut of Mamish by Goldi down, speedily in our time.